what did she say? Beans, greens, tomatoes, potatoes. All that stuff is that we eat now on Thanksgiving and Christmas or whatever people celebrate. All that stuff is soul food that's indigenous to America. We ate turkey here. We would fry, like we fried chicken. We would fry the turkey like we fried chicken. We had the big turkey legs and cut the turkey up in pieces and fry it. And we would have meat that would stay good through the winter because we weren't able to do as much hunting. All right, I'm back, y'all. Talking about soul food. Who's on? I'm waiting for people to get on. It's going to take everybody a minute. Hey, somebody's on. Peace. Oh, somebody's off. Talking about soul food. Well, it seems like it's going to take a while for people to get on. Just start looking. All right, 2 people. Probably a bad connection or something. All right. Is there one person here? Can they say peace? Can they say hey? Let me see if I can send anybody else here. Linda, where you at, girl? All right, trying to send some invites. Everybody's showing up today. What's going on? Everybody want to show up today. You're here, Bolton? All right, peace, Bolton. Mangapo. That means greetings. Po means peace. So it's like a peaceful greeting. All right, Mangapo. I'm going to talk about soul food. It's only a few people that came back. I know it's late, but I'm trying to get it out while I am ready to talk about it. And then we can talk about it again another time. Or y'all can watch it later on the replay. Oh, okay. Hello, Chief Z. She. Chief She is back. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the indigenous American origins of soul food. Now, I'm going to read off. I just did a Wikipedia. We know Wikipedia is not the most reliable, but it has some proof here. And it says soul food, which is very similar to southern cuisine of southern United States. Has a variety of ingredients, some of which are indigenous to Africa and were brought over by slaves, and others which are indigenous to the Americans and borrowed from Native American cuisines. So we're going to look into that. Okay. So, fried fish. We know fried fish as like I spoke about earlier, is an indigenous cuisine. We would take the cornmeal from the corn, which is indigenous to America, add our seasoning, sea salt that we would take from the ocean. And you ready for it? Okay. Yeah. So we would take to create. I think I talked about this before. To create salt, because we season our food here. We would take sea salt and we would boil it until all the water is out, and we would scrape the bottom of the pot, and that's how we got our sea salt. And we would preserve that into, we have our own sea salt little pottery dish for that. So for fried fish, we would have a pot with the oil. And for the oil, like we used to have Crisco back in the day, y'all. I think some people still use Crisco. They would take the animal lard, the animal fat, and they will put that in the pot and, fry it, to make the oil. And then you would take that fish that you cut and you cleaned and you battered in that cornmeal and seasoning and throw it in the big deep fryer. And that's how we had fried fish. And we actually use the frying technique, which is indigenous to America, I believe Scandinavia, which we know that the Vikings are from Scandinavia and they visited America. So they probably took that frying technique with them back to Scandinavia. And the frying technique is only indigenous to Scandinavia. And America. Well, of course, they, like I said, the Vikings took it from America and took it with them to Scandinavia. And those Scandinavians came to Scotland, and they had that technique there for some of the people. And I think those Scottish people did take that technique to certain parts of Africa. Did use that techniques that they learned from the Scottish, which learned it from the Scandinavians, and the Scandinavians who learned it from indigenous Americans. Okay. So the technique of frying food, frying fish, later during colonization they fried chicken. Um, all that is indigenous techniques of preserving food. So we didn't fry it just to be frying it. What we did is that preserved, like I said, to preserve the meat for a longer time, so you could take that meat with you or fish on a trip. And you can travel with it. You can keep it stored in the pot or something or pan for longer periods of time. And that also what it did was it made the food have more fat content. And now I know people talk about we're trying to cut fat, we're trying to be healthy, but then when you did not have a lot of food and you're going through winter time or you're going to travel, you want actually fatty foods or high carb foods to give you energy. So you have that as an energy source. When you're very active, having high carb stuff keeps you going, keeps you moving. Nowadays, when people are sitting around on computers and stuff and eating fried chicken and stuff, that's going to make you big. But when you're active, you're going to, the carbs going to help with your muscles and things like that. So that is the difference from eating soul food back in the day to eating soul food now, because people are, they're sedentary. So they sit in seats all day and they don't move, they're not active. If you're active, you can eat a better, cleaner version of soul food, like the greens. You can eat greens. You can eat beans. A lot of bodybuilders eat beans and greens. You can eat cornbread. Bodybuilders do eat cornbread too. They see it as a source of high carbs. Like they'll eat it for breakfast or something for the workout. You can look all this stuff. If you go to like bodybuilding.com, the forums on there, they do talk about eating cornbread and things like that. So they eat beans. If you're like on a budget as a bodybuilder, you will eat a lot of beans. So, let's see what else is on here. I'm looking at the Wikipedia soul food list and just going down. Turkey. So neck bones from turkey. That's the indigenous dish that we've been eating here for thousands of years. I don't know how to cook neck bones, but that is a soul food dish, which is indigenous to America. You said they cook with lard, Jay? Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. They took the lard, the animal fat, and created lard, much like how we used to use Crisco. They would have it in that. They would preserve it in that pot, and they would use it for frying or cooking food. They use a different blend of herbs and things with the lard to create like hair grease and stuff like that. So that was totally different. They had different pots for that. Let's see what else they got. So greens, we had greens here. I believe we used turnip greens. Turnip greens are indigenous to America. So yeah, we would and make turnip greens. I believe collard greens come from Africa. So, but they would use the techniques that we used here, and what we would do is we cook it in a pot, and we would put like a turkey leg in it. I know some of y'all grandmas, I know mine's, still do it that way. They'll put their seasoning in it. Like I said, we use sea salt here because we season our food. We had other herbs that we used, and then we would cook the greens like that. We put the meat in there, and what the meat would do, that grease from the meat would actually help preserve the vegetable. I personally don't like to eat meat in my vegetable. I don't like to mix meat and vegetables. Try not to eat meat at all, but our elders, they still do that, and they've been doing that for thousands of years, and that is how they preserve the greens. So you'll be able to, so it won't get moldy, you'll be able to eat those greens for like up to a week or longer. Yeah, so that's where we get, what did she say? Beans, greens, tomatoes, potatoes. All that stuff is that we eat now on Thanksgiving and Christmas or whatever people celebrate. All that stuff is soul food that's indigenous to America. We ate turkey here. We would fry, like we fried chicken, we would fry the turkey like we fried chicken. We had the big turkey legs and cut the turkey up in pieces and fry it. And we would have meat that would stay good through the winter because we weren't able to do as much hunting. I don't believe they fried. Can't really fry deer. Probably could fry up maybe some snake and stuff and cut the snake up and fry it. Sweet potatoes. We talked about this before in one of my videos. Sweet potatoes are indigenous to America. Africa does have the yam, but sweet potato and yam are a different species. They're a different vegetable. So we used to cook sweet potatoes are actually sweeter. According to African people that I know, they said sweet potato here is sweeter than the yams. I'm not sure. I never eat yams before. Most people in America have never eaten yams. They don't really import yams because we have our own sweet potato. Maybe they have a hybrid species of the two. I'm not sure. But sweet potatoes are indigenous to America. You can cook it without sugar and it will still be sweet. We would sometimes cook it with maple syrup. And we had other type of spice. Cinnamon's indigenous to Asia, I believe. But we had other spices that we would use with it. And sometimes we would like throw cranberries and other type of berries and stuff in it. And cook it in the pot like we do now with some water, some yams, soul food. Let's see what else. Cornbread. Cornbread. Y'all remember that Chris Rock was like, cornbread, ain't nothing wrong with that. Everybody likes cornbread, right? You said sweetest sweet potatoes from Jamaica. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I have to check that out. Go to the West Indian grocery and see what they got. But yeah, cornbread is indigenous to America. It's an indigenous dish. It has been eaten here for thousands of years. I believe the Mayans have the oldest, I guess, evidence of it is down in Mexico of eating cornbread. Because the crop was first the crop was first cultivated in Mexico. So the She people took that crop and they spread it around wherever they migrated. We know they migrated up to North America, to the woodland areas. So the Algonquins, the Iroquois, Muskogee people are descendants of the She people. And the She are, of descendants of Mayans and Olmecs and whatever. Okay, somebody said something. Let me look. I can't read all this. What did you say, Robert? You said, in related to soul food, barbecue, our indigenous people invented barbecue as we know it. If I could post a pic of what Europeans saw as barbecuing when they got here, guess who invented the You got cut off. I couldn't see, but yeah. So yeah, barbecue is indigenous to America. So like barbecue, we would barbecue all type of stuff, and we had mesquite, what they call mesquite. We would mesquite the fish. Fish is like a seasoning, and we actually are the inventors of grills. And we would use either metals that we have, but most of the time they would use sticks, and they would grill the meat on the sticks. So they'll grill fish and meat and vegetables across these pits. Like they have the sticks across a pit. And you say, yes, we're the best master, the pit masters. Yeah, we invented. Um, we invented grills and pits and whatever. So all that stuff, like they say, grilling's the American pastime. It really is. We've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. So y'all know cornbread is indigenous, which is seen as soul food. Grits is basically similar to cornbread. It's from hominy. Powhatan had a tribe called Chickahominy, and that word hominy comes from the Pamunkey language, the Algonquian language, because those were the first people that the British encountered. Now, the Spanish encountered Muskogee people first, so it's a whole, the Muskogee and the Arawaks and the Caribs and what they call those? Tainos. So that's a whole different group of people. We also had hoe cakes. I made several posts about the cornbread and hoe cakes and grits. Yeah, grits are corn, hoe cakes are corn, and cornbread is corn. Sometimes they left like the actual corn kernels. Most of the time it was just grounded, like finely grounded corn that they used to make a bread. But this one says Hush Puppies. Now I believe, let's see, Hush Puppies was probably a later invention. It says because it uses, wheat flour, eggs. We didn't have eggs and, baking soda and all this. We didn't have all the milk. We didn't use milk and dairy and stuff like that. So in a way, you can say we ate more like a vegan diet, but with meat, if that makes sense. We didn't have dairy and, stuff like that. You said it's Pokey people. I said Muskogee, Muskogee. Those are the Choctaws, the Creeks, the Yamasee. That's who I'm talking about, Muskogee people. I believe Cherokee or Muskogee as well. No, Cherokee or Iroquois language group. Cherokee confused me because there's different groups of Cherokee. Some were Muskogee, some were Iroquois. I believe that's what it is. Other inventions from soul food developed from what we already had, like sweet potato pie. We already had sweet potatoes that we would cook, like what we call now yams, candy yams. We already used, we would make that with the maple syrup and whatever else we had to put in it. And from that, using like the European ingredients, we created the pie crust and whatever. We used the pie crust that they used in England, and then we added the sweet potato yams that we already had. So, yeah. Let's see. Cobbler, same thing. What they would do is they would take the, peaches and things that were found here, and they would just throw the cornbread, on top of it, basically. Once they got other ingredients from the Europeans, like the flour, the wheat flour, and things like that, they changed up the recipe, butter and things. We didn't have butter here. We used the animal fat in place of butter. So we made oils from that. So I'm just going down the list right now of soul food that I see. I'm going to dig back in here and talk a little bit more about soul food. Now, we did have a pig that was indigenous to America. It's not called a pig. It's called a pickaninny or something like that. I knew it yesterday, but it's kind of late, so my mind is not fresh. You said, how did we become the masters of mac and cheese? Mac and cheese is actually one of the only slave foods. Now, a lot of people are calling soul food slave food, which it is not. Most of the dishes for soul food was already indigenous to America for thousands of years. Some of the other dishes, like fried okra, is indigenous to Africa, and they use our frying techniques from America to create fried okra. Excuse me. So fried okra, that is, you can consider it slave food or not, because Africans were making okra way before they were enslaved by the Europeans, or we were enslaved. Indigenous Americans were enslaved by Europeans. So when they came here, they blended that to create fried okra. You said mac and cheese. The history of mac and cheese. Mac and cheese was invented on Thomas Jefferson's plantation. Now his daughter is the one who is she is claiming to be the creator of mac and cheese, which we know is not true. She probably never ever touched anything in the kitchen. She's just taking credit, like a lot of people do, when it comes to stuff that indigenous women create. So the indigenous and African women are indigenous as well to Africa. So the melanated women created mac and cheese on Thomas Jefferson's plantation. It's a weird dish. I don't know who thought that's just somebody's creative. We just geniuses to come up with that dish. I love mac and cheese, but it is a new dish. They use macaroni, which comes from Europe, and taken from the noodle, which came from Asia, and cheese, which comes from Europe. The dairy products, and they would mix that up with. They would use breadcrumbs from wheat bread, and that's how they created mac and cheese. And they put it in the oven, and y'all know how to make mac. Some of y'all do. Milk in there, whatever. And that's how they created mac and cheese. And that was created in Virginia on the Thomas Jefferson plantation. So that is mac and cheese and fried okra, if you want to consider fried okra, are actually the only real slave foods that were created by slaves that were not present before the coming together of indigenous, African, and European people. So those three groups, that's where that came from. You said Europeans don't make mac and cheese because they try to pretend like they invented it, but they didn't. The indigenous women and African women of Virginia created it. That's why they don't know how to make it. All right, let's see. So like I was saying before everybody came in the room, or whatever you want to call this live, so it says, some of the ingredients for soul food are indigenous to Africa and were brought over by slaves, and others which are indigenous to America and are borrowed from Native American cuisine. So the foundation basically is Native American cuisine for soul food. You said the originators. Yes, the originators. So it's based on Native American cuisines. Let me click this button and see what it says about Native American cuisines. Okay, Native American cuisines includes all food practices of indigenous people of America. Blah, blah, blah. So these are examples of Native American cuisines: cornbread, turkey, cranberry, blueberry, hominy, and mush. Now we know that the enslaved people were forced to eat cornbread and mush for most of their diet. Sometimes they did get a little meat, and sometimes they did get a little bit of fruit or vegetables, maybe like cranberries or greens. stuff that they grew. For slaves, if you lived on a plantation, I mean, people who were who were enslaved by, regular houses or doctors or whatever, they had more freedom to eat what they wanted to. But for plantations, it was a money thing. People had to eat mush and cornbread and cheap things like that. Like the children would eat mush out of truffles that you feed horses and pigs. They would just put mush in there and let the little children eat out of there. And that's how they fed like the people on the big plantations. Now, majority of slaves were not on plantation. That's another misconception of slavery. So like on Saturdays, the slaves would have a free day, half a day on Saturday, and a full day on Sunday. That's how we got the weekend, because we're on a slave schedule. If you're an employee, you're on a slave. Basically, you're on a slave schedule. You have the weekends free. So on Saturday, they only work half the day, and then the other half the day they were able to cultivate their greens and their potatoes or whatever they had on their little patch of land, and that's how they were able to, I guess, sustain their health. Now, people are saying, I keep seeing posts this whole week talking about soul food is so unhealthy and soul food is bad for you and it's going to make you overweight. But you have to think the soul food was the diet of the enslaved people. So how can they work these fields and do all this labor and work and be muscular and strong eating soul food if it's so bad? If you're sitting on a couch all day, if you're sitting behind a desk all day, of course soul food is terrible for you. But if you, before, processed food, and you're using natural products that you grew yourself to create the soul food, with give or take a little bit of sugar and a little bit of salt, not massive amounts that we use now, soul food is okay for your diet. People lived long lives. They were able to work fields from sun up to sundown eating soul food. So it can't be that horrible for you. It's your people's choice to eat what they want to eat. Now that's up to you now. It's totally different now because the food or processed, the meat, is poison basically. So it's totally different than then. But the actual food, the actual recipes from back in the day are not bad. You said Jamaican brothers and sisters have knowledge of oxtail. Yeah, I mean, I believe the ox are from Europe, so that would be a European dish that's added to soul food. But the basic, like they said, when they're talking about Native American cuisines, is cornbread, turkey, cranberry, beans, greens, tomatoes, potatoes, turkey. That's indigenous American food. So that's the basis of soul food. Sweet potatoes, is indigenous to America. Okay, let's see. North American native cuisines can offer somewhat from Southwestern and Mexican cuisine, and its simplicity and directness of flavor. They use ramps, wild ginger, mincer lettuce, and juniper berry. Guess to give it flavor, right? So let's see what else they're talking about here. What the Eastern Woodland Indians ate. What'd you say, Deepa? Soul food is grown from the soul. Yeah, people took pride. Like, we've been eating this for thousands of years, in America. They've been eating okra and collard greens for thousands of years in Africa. So, it's soul food. It's not bad for you. And we've been eating, we had turnip greens here in America. So it's similar food. All right, so it says the essential staples of Eastern Woodland Aboriginal Americans were maize, beans, and squash. These were called the Three Sisters because they were planted interdependently. Now, what they mean by interdependently, it's going to explain it. I was about to break it down for you. It says the beans grew up the tall stalks of the maize, while the squash spread out at the base of the three plants and provided protection and support for the root system. A number of other domesticated crops were also popular during some of the time periods in the eastern woodlands, including a local version of quinoa, a variety of, oh goodness, I always mispronounce this, amaranth. I know what it is, but I always mispronounce it. Sumpweed, marsh elder, little barley, maygrass, and sunflowers. Now you know how we eat sunflower seeds. Yeah, sunflowers are indigenous to America. Sunflower seeds are an indigenous American food. We've been eating sunflower seeds for thousands of years. We also had quinoa, so I know a lot of people who are on more healthy diets, vegan, vegetarian diets, eat a lot of quinoa, and it's an indigenous American food. Okay? Now, the southeastern Native Americans, I believe they're talking about, well, they're still talking about the Algonquins, and probably talking about, Cherokee and Choctaw. You said you love fried tomatoes? Oh, I had it before, but it's not something, yeah. Actually, I went to school with one of these boys that was in that movie, that fried green tomatoes. Oh my gosh, he bragged so much about being in that movie. I was like, is it that serious? Anyways, so it's a southeastern Native American culture has formed the cornerstone of Southern cuisine, soul food, from its origins till the present day. From southeastern Native American culture came one of the main staples of the Southern diet, corn or maize, either ground into meal or limed with alkaline salt to make hominy, using a Native American technology known as nixtamalization. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Corn was used to make all kinds of dishes, from the familiar cornbread and grits to liquors and such as whiskey. So we've been making whiskey and liquor for hundreds of thousands of years. And as y'all know, was it Jack Daniels? The recipe for Jack Daniels was created by a brother. Jack Daniels just took that man's invention and he put his name on it. Let me read what y'all saying. So liquor and whiskeys like that, made from corn, whatever, are indigenous to America. He said the food of the land was grown for the people who was indigenous to the land and allowed them to live in their environment. Yes, correct. You're right. He said it's the oils that poison it. Yeah, it's the oils, like I said, the processed food, the sugar. We didn't process sugar like that. I'm not even sure about the origins of sugar. I believe the sugar is not from here. But we did not eat sugar like, we had maple syrup. I don't even think we had honey, because honey is, they brought the European honeybees here to create honey for them. So we use mainly maple syrup and fruits to sweeten our foods. You said beer also. Beer is made from, yeah, we had barley here. We did have barley here. And, they had they have a wheat in Europe that they make beer from. But we did have a barley here. So we made whiskey and, like you said, beer. And we made, liquor. So, you said coconut oil is the best and healthiest. I believe coconuts come from Melanesia. So, I don't know if we really use that here like that, but we use like animal fat. Okay, so let me go back to what I said. Alright. Though a lesser staple, potatoes were also adopted from Native American cuisine and were used in many ways similar to corn. Native Americans introduced the first non-Native American Southerners to many other vegetables still familiar on Southern tables. Squash, pumpkin. I know somebody think, was it Ty? Was it you? Asked about the pumpkin. Many types of beans and tomatoes. Many various peppers and sassafras all came to the settlers via native tribes. We said we used animal fat more than anything else. Yeah, you're right, Jay. We did. We used because it was accessible to us, and we could easily preserve it. You said no, actually, olive oil is the best oil. Yeah, olive oil comes from Africa. It comes from Africa and Mediterranean. So we didn't have that here. We had to use what we had. We had corn oil from corn, and we had animal fat. So corn oil probably was a long process to create, so it's easier once you hunt a deer down or bear or whatever to take that fat and create a grease with that. So I need to visit Jamaica. I do need to visit Jamaica. I do. Maybe this summer. Yeah, my cousin got married in Jamaica. I couldn't go, bro, but he said it was beautiful. Him and his wife loved it. All right, so many fruits are available in this region. Muscadines, blackberries, raspberries, and many other wild berries that were a part of Southern Native Americans' diets. Okay, let's see what else is said. All right, to a far greater degree than anyone realizes, several of the most important food dishes in southeastern Indians live on today in soul food. Let me read it again. To a far greater degree than anyone realizes, several of the most important dishes of the southeastern Indians live on today in soul food, eaten by both black and white Southerners, quote-unquote black and quote-unquote white. Hominy, for example, is still eaten. Sofki live on as grits or hominy. Same thing, hominy and grits. Cornbread is used by Southern cooks. Indian fritters, variously known as hoe cakes or Johnny cakes. Indians' boiled cornbread is present in Southern cuisine as cornmeal dumplings and hush puppies. So Native Americans created, Indigenous Americans, let me rephrase that, Indigenous Americans created hush puppies. Southerners cooked their beans and field peas by boiling them, as did the Indians. Like the Indians, they cured their meat and smoked it over hickory coals. So, you see all these foods, what they say. So, let me read it again. Several of the most important food dishes of southeastern Indians live on today in soul food. Alright? Let's see what else. What else? Let's see what the Western. Western, not much of impact as the Southeastern. So as you see, mostly from the Southeastern tribes are the foundation of soul food. I don't know how else to break it down. Let's see. Also chili. I don't know if chili is considered soul food. We have in DC, we have Ben's Chili Bowl. That is, the spot, was the spot. But chili is an indigenous American cuisine. Beans are indigenous to America. Tomatoes are indigenous to America. Most people used to use ground turkey. Turkeys are indigenous to America. I mean, people use beef now too, or whatever. You can make chili without meat. I prefer chili without meat. So you have beans and tomatoes, basic. All right. Let's see. What else are they talking about? The Caribbean. All right, Caribbean. Y'all, you said Jamaica. All right, let's see what they say about the Caribbean Native Americans. cuisines. This region comprises the cultures of the Arawaks, the Caribs, and the Chiboni. Would you say indigenous bloodline not only is Choctaw, Washita, and Amaru called Haitians? Oh, okay. I thought the Arawaks were in Haiti. All right. So the Taino of the Greater Antilles were the first New World people encountered by Columbus. Prior to European contact, these groups foraged, hunted, and fished. The Taino cultivated cassava. Didn't somebody talk about cassava before? Oh, you said salmon. Yes, salmon's indigenous to American. Chili, yep, chili is an indigenous American cuisine. Taino cultivated cassava, sweet potato, maize, beans, squash, pineapples, which is indigenous to America, peanuts, and peppers. So all those foods are indigenous to America. The oldest, I believe, evidence of peanuts were found in Peru. And the Peruvians took that peanut to Africa. So how did a peanut get to Africa? Thousands of years ago. I think they walked on water. I think they walked on water to Africa, right? Yeah, because everyone wasn't as smart as the Europeans, so they had to walk on water. You said you hate to see Negroes eat whiting fish. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with whatever fish you can get your hands on. You said chocolate is indigenous to America. Let's see what else they're talking about. I don't know all these Caribbean dishes, but I'll read them off. It says ajaco, the same as pepper pot, a soup believed to have originated in Cuba before Columbus's arrival. So whoever eats, likes the West Indian food, ajaco was a soup that was in Cuba before Columbus. The soup mixes a variety of meats, tubers, and peppers. That sounds good. Blue crab or not snow crab. I don't know the difference, to be honest. Snow crab are big, right? Those are like Alaska. Alaska's still America, so. All right. Barbecue. Am I pronouncing it right? The origin of the English word barbecue. Oh, barbecue. Is a slow grilling meat over a fire pit. So the Caribbean had barbecue. They had their own form of barbecue, as did the southeastern native indigenous people. Jerk meat, a style of cooking meat that originated with the Tainos of Jamaica. Oh, weren't you just talking about Jamaica, Bolton? Jamaica, man. So jerk is an indigenous dish from Jamaica by the Tainos. The meat was applied with a dry rub of allspice, Scotch bonnet pepper, and perhaps additional spices before being smoked over a fire or wood coal. So we had all these things before Columbus, right? What does it say? First indigenous people Columbus made acquaintances with was from Haiti, right? That's the Arawaks. Isn't that what they said? I gotta excuse me. I've been talking more than I normally talk on these lives. Anyways, okay. Let me go through this because I don't know all these groups. So, cassave is a crispy, thin flatbread made from cassava root, and is pre-Columbian in Caribbean and Amazonia. Bami is a Jamaican bread from cassava and water. Today, this bread is fried and made with coconut milk. Isn't that the cocoa bread? Guanmi, a Puerto Rican food, is similar to tamale, made with cornmeal and mashed cassava together. Okay, so tamales, hot tamales. Tamales are indigenous to America. Well, I think everyone figured that it came from Mexico, but it's saying it's coming from Puerto Ricans. Who would have thought that? All right. So it's a whole lot of food. Let me see if I see anything. Pepper pot. It's a spicy stew of Taino origin, based on meat, vegetables, chili peppers, and boiled down cassava juice, with the legacy stretching from Cuba, Colombia coast to Guyana. Hmm. All right, bush teas are from the Caribbean, basically, and yeah, those are like so. So the main thing, jerk chicken and jerk whatever fish, whatever they cook with it, is indigenous to America. It's not a slave food like some people try to say. Jamaican food, jerk food, barbecue, stuff like that, slave food. Jerk food is not slave food. Jerky, which we had here in northern North America, the mainland, is indigenous food. So I see a lot of people going to sleep now. But I'm gonna wrap it up, y'all. All right, so there's a whole lot of dishes. I'm gonna get back to the basis of soul food for y'all. Okay, everybody still here? Let me read this. This is from Modern Farmer magazine, or is this the blog? They interviewed this person went to the Native American roots of Southern cuisine. So let's see what she says. So this person is a genealogist. She visited her grandmother who lived in Oklahoma, and I believe they're the Chickasaw tribe. Let's see what they say. So she is talking about, she explored a cookbook from the Chickasaw Nation, and she found a lot of the Southern cuisine in there. Let's see what she says. Okay. I'm trying to find the good parts for you because it's getting late. He said they're messing with my audio. It's going in and out. Oh, I do apologize for that. Alright, so they're talking about the three systems. These pictures keep popping up. They're talking about the three sisters, which, we do eat within the soul food diet. Oh, more people coming back. What? Now I can't find the... My mouse is acting up. I'm going to have to... Alright, so she goes on and says, take the story of grits. So she's talking to the Chickasaw Nation. When the Choctaw got hold of corn, introduced to the Mississippi Valley around the year 800, they discovered the process of nixtamalization, which I talked about earlier, is a way to add lye from the fire ashes to the corn to make it more edible and nutritious. It was a fortuitous accident, says Odin. Perhaps someone accidentally got some ash in the pot and saw the way the corn blossomed. All southern grits still include lye, as a modern enzyme already included in the brand you'll find at the grocery store. But it is the same process that was discovered hundreds of years ago by native people, she says. It is an ancient process, and it blows me away. Okay, so let's see what else she's talking about. Another colorful story comes in the form of Southern-style green beans. Okay, here's the interesting part right here, which I was telling y'all about earlier. Fresh green beans were snapped by the tribes and strung up on the rafters of houses called leather breeches by the Europeans. They were thrown in the water and cooked for a long time to restitute them, often with a little bit of fat or meat for flavor. Sounds familiar to the overcooked green beans dotted with bacon, of course, that often find their way to the southern table. So you see right there the Muskogee people, the Chickasaw, Choctaw people, um, cooking their greens like we do now. You know, overcook. You know how Southern women overcook their greens, and they add a little meat or a little fat for flavor. That is indigenous way of cooking and preserving the vegetable. All right, this is okay. Let me see what they talking about gumbo. Okay, then there's gumbo. Gumbo is the African word for okra. The seed was likely brought over by the slaves. The southeastern tribes took to the crop and adopted the word as well. The Chickasaw word for okra is gumbo, according to Bond. And when the Acadian people, those Frenchmen who originally settled in Canada, arrived in what is now Louisiana, they formed alliances with the southeastern tribes and the slaves. And the classic New Orleans stew was born somewhere down the line. It is just a splendid story of food, says Odin. So y'all see right there the story of gumbo? So it comes from the word combo, the Chickasaw word, combo. Y'all see the similarities? So gumbo comes from combo. It's not, yeah, gumbo. Gumbo, whatever. Gumbo is the African word. Wherever, I mean, that's so general. What tribe is this from? What language? It says gumbo is the African word for okra. And then Chickasaw word for okra is gumbo. So that's how the gumbo and combo came about. All right. So way out in Indian country, there's another familiar sight for Southerners. A Folgers coffee can full of bacon grease sitting next to the stove. Y'all know about that can full of grease? Don't act like y'all know about that can. We all got that can. All right? And its purpose is all too similar as well. The southeastern tribes will carefully harvest wild greens like poke and then throw them in a pan with some bacon grease, says Odin. Call it a precursor to all the all-important collard and mustard greens in the South. Right? You say, yeah, do I look tired? I am tired. You say, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired. Let's see what else is. You said in Pembroke, North Carolina, they made a fried corn dough and filled it with collard greens. In Venezuela today, they eat what is it called? Arepa, which is basically the same thing. Oh, okay. Oh, let's see. Well, y'all see right there another instance of greens and that can. When I tell y'all about that can of grease, that the animal fat that we used to keep by the stove, we still keep it by the stove now. And they used to throw the meat in there. Now, for me, I don't like meat in my greens, in my vegetables, but it used to be good. It used to be good, but okay. It's a certain flavor that you get. I know for Southern cooks, it's a certain flavor that you get when you mix that animal fat with the greens, and that was, like I said, that was used to preserve the actual vegetable. All right. So yeah, that is an interesting fact coming from the Chickasaw Choctaw people. Let's see what else I can find in this article. Yep, so basically, beans, three sisters she's talking about. And yeah, that's soul food right there. Y'all know about that can of grease and them greens. And let's see what else now. This guy right here, let me talk about him. It says the real roots of Southern cuisine. I'm going to show y'all this man right now. He is a chef in Atlanta, as we say, Atlanta. He is the chef in Atlanta. This brother right here. His name is Todd Richardson, and he's going to talk about the real roots of soul food. So let me switch it back so y'all can read it. You'll see, I try to have a little bit backdrop, have a little backdrop up here for y'all for your entertainment. All right, so Chief Todd Richardson, he's talking about Southern food and slavery. All right, and let's break it down for you. All right. So he said, I'm trying to get to the parts where he's talking about it being indigenous. Now he's saying it's healing food. Okay, so they asked him, so you believe the country is reverted back to a more straightforward, simpler food? Um, he said, Southern food is really not that simple. It's an essential American storyteller among our government and music. Okay, that sounds a little weird. Um, it has a long history. Southern food encompasses many regions, people, and economics. It's good, healing food born from strife and survival. The slaves were creating Southern cuisine in order to make history. They were just cooking to stay alive. That's exactly what it is. All the food is made for preservation. It's made of, it's high carb, high fat. It's made to give you a boost of energy, like when you are very active. If you're not active, it's not good for you. You got to be active. We know our people used to be doing walking. I mean, people who were enslaved were, working. People after slavery were working. They're always moving. And that's why they lived to be 100 years old, 80, 90 years old, eating soul food. You can't get away with that now. You sit behind a computer. So, we say Crisco and lard. Yeah, Crisco was a lard. I believe it was an animal fat. Um, that's why I keep referring to Crisco, because Crisco's in that can. And like I said before, we used to have pottery and we keep the animal fat in. So, and we keep that near the oven, the stove area. So now we got the Crisco or whatever big can of beans that you already use, and we use that to store our animal fat, like people in the South. I don't know about y'all Northerners. I don't know what y'all do up north, but we still, even the European people live in the South, still use that can. Some of them got indigenous blood down the line or whatever. Anyways, okay, how did the slave influence Southern cooking? And what are the typical ingredients that they were working with at the time? All right, this is what he's asked. And this is what the chef is saying. He said, you have to look at two things: what came with slaves on the boat and what they had to work with when they got to America. So he's talking about the African ones. There was a strong Native American influence in the early beginnings of Southern food when slaves began arriving. Crops like corn and techniques like frying, that he's saying that's indigenous, American. Then you have crops and techniques that came over from West Africa with the slaves, like peanut, which we know was really indigenous to America, which was brought pre-Columbus to Africa. Okra or gumbo, and stewing techniques. Well, Native Americans had their own stewing techniques too. So there's also daily survival ingredients like watermelons. This is interesting. Watermelons, which were served as canteens in the field. It's 95% water. The slaves also used the rinds as soles for their shoes. So ingredients like this, that are now part of Americana and Native American influence, really started shaping Southern food very early on. But you can't discount other influences like that of the Spanish and Portuguese throughout Louisiana, or the Latin influence through parts of Texas. The slaves worked with what was available to them and adapted to their daily diets. So again, you got to ask, okay, how is the slave food strongly like he says, influenced by Native American cuisines. Because, like I pointed out before, Native Americans were enslaved. Africans did come over here from West Africa, but Native Americans were already slaves here when they came here. And we know from the numbers it was mostly men and young boys who came over from Africa. And those men and young boys had to marry the indigenous women. A lot of the West African women, unfortunately, when they came over, they could not reproduce or did not want to reproduce. What you can understand is them killing off the children. They didn't want them to live like this. So they had to reproduce with the native women. Anyways, that's off subject. Sidebar. Let's get back to what he's talking about. Alright? So he's going on to talk about, okay, so through a diet based on survival, the slaves really transformed Southern food into what we see today. What people don't really understand, this is him responding. What people don't really understand about Southern food is that it is based off preservation methods. How can we keep the food the longest period of time and make sure it's safe to eat? Africans never ate beef until it was introduced to them in America. Fish, vegetables, fruits were the diets of most African people. Salting and frying meats and vegetables were simply preservation methods that they learned from the Native Americans. Y'all hear that? It says, for salting and frying meats and vegetables were simply preservation methods learned from the Native Americans. They adapted to survive while in the process, unknowingly transforming the Southern diet with the ingredients that they brought with them from Africa. And they found that they could grow these crops quite well here in the South. Okay, what'd you say? I don't ever see the need to go all the way to Africa to get more slaves. I don't see the need for people from Europe coming here, but they came. I don't know. The whole point is most of the people were already here. At the most, the highest number, they said 500,000 came here. Most of those were men. Those men had to procreate with somebody. If only, based on the numbers, like 30-something thousand women came, and all those women weren't able to produce, then who did the men, procreate with? It had to be the indigenous women, and the bloodline goes through the women, right? Correct? Mama's baby, papa's maybe. So he's saying that like salting and frying meats and vegetables come from the Native Americans. So you got to ask, how did they learn this? You think Native Americans just came and at the plantation fence, oh, this is how you make fried fish? No, they were enslaved too. They were enslaved with these people, right? All right, let's see what else he's talking about. All right, what Southern techniques can be traced back to the slaves? Now this is, see, he kind of contradicts himself because he'll say, okay, this is what, I'll just read what he says. Okay, definitely one pot cooking. Gumbo, cornbread, and hoe cakes were being done out in the fields. There was no lunch breaks, but to me, the most essential technique to come out of slave-based cooking is preservation, which he just said came from the Native Americans, so now he's saying it came from slaves. So who were these slaves? They were obviously Native American slaves. How the food was preserved is what made it taste so good, but they weren't thinking about that at the time. The economics of survival was the slaves' only motivation. Preservation methods are truly what transformed Southern cooking to what we know it to be today. What you say? Are you talking about some SF 181 forms? I ain't got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Ain't got nothing to do with no Southern food. You gotta ask people in that other group about it. All right, let's get back to what he's saying. How did preservation methods influence the flavors? Okay, here's a chef. To me, greens tell the unique story of Southern food. There was no refrigeration, so the slaves used meat, mostly pork, to salt to preserve the greens by laying the meat on top. Y'all heard that? Not only did the pork preserve what was underneath, but it flavored it as well. They didn't necessarily eat the meat after the greens were finished. They might repurpose it. Frying was another technique. Many people are shocked to learn that fried chicken is not Southern born, but actually Scandinavian and Native American. Animals in West Africa was not fatty. It was hot, and they didn't require fat to stay warm. Frying was a preservation method that the slaves adopted from the Native Americans, right? One of those Scandinavians. Well, they were Scottish people of Scandinavian descent, but the Native Americans were enslaved, so the methods most likely came from them. He said making stock. He said they felt that Africans were more turned up to be slaves in the system since they had been dealing with them prior to America. That's why they were more expensive. No. Did you see my other video, Damon, when I talked about, I introduced that book from Canadian slavery, the Canadian Indian slavery, where they said that the Europeans called America the land of laborers, and they used the Algonquin people, which they called the Pawnees, as slaves. And if you see the picture, these were dark-skinned men that looked like you and I. They looked like, they look like when you look at the posters when they say slaves for sale, and which people call those people African. The pictures were the same pictures of the Pawnee, and they later used it on those slave sales. So the Pawnee people were so-called black people. He said, no offense. No, I was talking to Damon. So it's a significance. There has to be a significance in regard to those who are claiming the true indigenous nationality. Okay, I don't know about all this. I know what my nationality is, but I don't know about all those. You got to talk to somebody else about the forms and stuff. I'm not sure. All right, so he's talking about the preservation, and it's a picture of the greens with some meat in it. And he said, I found this out when I was up in Louisville, Kentucky, researching Native American foods. They were teaching the method to Lewis and Clark expedition. It was meant to preserve the meat underneath the skin during long journeys. He's talking about frying chicken. They would fry rabbit, squirrels, small game birds, in bear oil. Didn't somebody say something about bear oil? Slaves in certain regions in the South caught on to this method, finding the skin of the chicken, for instance, to be quite tasty. Jerky is another example of preservation turned tasty snack in the fields. You take the meat off the top of the shank, slice it very thin, and dry it out on tobacco leaves. They learned this preservation method from the Native Americans because in the early days of slavery, Africans knew little of preserving meat. The slaves economically had no choice but to stretch every last morsel of food they had. Food preservation is the key to all Southern cooking. It's an essential ingredient. Okay. Jay, he said, I hate when Negroes act scary about pork and turn Muslim on something their ancestors cultivated. Well, some of their ancestors were Muslims. They were Moors. So they did practice Islam. Some of the indigenous tribes did practice Islam as well. There's evidence of that. I don't think it was a large scale. They probably received it through trading. which they said Islam was spread through trading, not the sword. That's what the historians are saying now. So, I mean, we didn't, down in the South, they had their own type of, there was a type of pig that wasn't, it's not called a pig, it was indigenous to America, and those tribes used that meat, and they used turkey, and they used whatever was available. People weren't scary, they were trying to survive. They wanted to eat meat to stay alive. Now we don't have to eat meat, especially if you're, sitting behind computers all day. You don't need that type of, you don't really need that. So, no type of complex protein, right? Right, let me see what else he's talking about. Yeah, so basically he broke it down saying a lot of the methods and the foods are they learned from Native Americans, and that's because those people were enslaved as well. They were enslaved first. You notice how he says that the Africans came and they came to the plantations and they learned from the native people. He said Spanish brought the boar. Yeah, they brought pigs. They brought cows. They brought whatever else. Chickens. I think chickens are indigenous to Asia, but they brought chickens as well. Right? And then he got this this recipe for greens on here. Y'all don't want to see that. Y'all don't need to see that. But yeah, that's breaking down soul food right there. We saw several sources say that frying and the preservation methods come from the indigenous Americans. And we know that those people were enslaved, and that's how others learned those techniques, right? So, yeah. And you can find that on Deep South Magazine. That article was in Deep South Magazine. Yeah. And the other article was in Modern Farmer. So anybody got any questions? I'm about to sign off. It's past midnight, y'all. I'm getting tired. I'm about to sign off. You guys got any questions? J number 1, J number 2. Any questions before I go? Let me see. What is this? Something just popped up. Oh, they're also talking about seafood. Now, the way we currently eat seafood is the way that we have been eating seafood here for, hundreds of thousands of years. So, I know Powhatan Nation ate a lot of seafood. Like I said, we have fried fish. We ate shrimp and clams and things like that. So seafood was another staple. If the people were close to the ocean, they were able to eat that. Right? Beans. All beans are indigenous to America. Yeah, so that's it. We know greens. Greens, beans, tomatoes, potatoes, turkey. You said, what's the next topic? You tell me what's the next topic. What is the next topic going to be? All right, thank you, Jay. Other Jay, okay, if you want to be called Other Jay, that's fine. Thank you. He says only one me. There's 2 Jays. There's Jay Main and Jay Jackson. You said you'll suggest later. Okay, yeah, I'll try to make a post and see what people want to hear about. I've just been hearing like a lot of talk about Pocahontas. I've been seeing a whole bunch of posts. I think tomorrow, not tomorrow, Sunday, the History Channel is going to reveal their great documentary about her, full of fluff probably and westernized stuff. But we'll see. Yeah, I'll keep y'all tuned in. And then I kept hearing about soul food, people saying how bad it was for you, and it's slave food. Soul food is not slave food. We've been eating soul food for thousands of years. most of the dishes come from indigenous American dishes, and then other dishes like okra comes from Africa, and those people have been eating it for 100,000 years. It's not slave food. Everybody wasn't slave eating those foods. So it's a melanated food, melanated people's food. That's what it is. He said transatlantic slave hoax should be the next topic. Oh, that's a very touchy subject for a lot of people, and people get mad when I talk about it. Now, I wouldn't say it's a hoax because it did happen. I believe it happened, but it is way exaggerated, and the numbers don't add up. And like I said, it was only like 30-some thousand women came to British North America, and it was mostly men, young men at that, and boys, little boys. And, they had to mate with the indigenous American women. And like I said, the bloodline goes through the women. So if that person has a child with an African man, and that child is both, and then that child has a child with an indigenous man, and down the line, or, opposite way, that's what happened here. And then some of us were not enslaved at all. Like my family were not enslaved on both sides. So yes, I'm Pamunkey and Mattapani. So we were not enslaved. So we don't have that bloodline. So it's a little different. He said we need to study the ocean currents, tides, and wind. Yeah, we should. That's interesting. We need to study the rivers as well. In America, I believe we have the largest freshwater reserves. Everyone else does not have fresh water that's not sea salt. What they call it? Salted. So that is very important for our survival, to make sure the water is safe and fresh, which we know it's not happening. That's why some of the people are fighting for those, to stop those pipe. I don't know what they're doing. I haven't been keeping up with that pipeline stuff, because it's very important to keep our environment. Right. You said the bloodline goes through the mother, Mayat. Haru. Yes, that's the bloodline. Goes to the mother. Mother's baby, Papa's maybe. So yeah, it's important that we know this information, because knowing this makes you proud of your environment and want to take action and want to, because you're not you see yourself as being part of the land, and you're not a foreigner, and you feel proud of yourself and your heritage and your land. You want to take care of it. He said the sail to and from Africa is difficult. Yes, it's very difficult. That's why the numbers are not adding up, and the story is not adding up. Now, Brazil is only 3,000 miles away from, I believe, that the coast of West Africa. So people coming to Brazil, is more pliable and it's more easy. Brazil also had, I think I was just reading today in the library. I spend my Fridays or Saturdays in the library. I'll probably go back tomorrow. I was just reading today that they were taking a lot of indigenous people from Brazil and bringing them here as slaves. The Amazon, what they call it, Amazonia people, I believe that's what they refer to them as. And I just saw a post on one of the groups, and a guy showed this picture of one of the indigenous chiefs here. And I was like, he looks just like this basketball player, Leandro Barbosa from Brazil. So, they were switching the people around, the indigenous people, and the African people came there too. And they were just mixing us up, basically trying to denationalize us, so people did not have an identity to create a slave race. Once you don't have an identity, they can tell you who you are and what to do, and you do not have pride in yourself, in your land, and your people, because you don't know who you are, you don't know anything. So that's exactly what they did. here. And also, like I showed you guys before on the Voyage to Senegal book, they were trying to do that to Africa, but the Africans would not let them do that. I believe they did not estimate how large Africa really was, so they could not. They did have plantations in Africa, which a lot of people don't know. The Europeans had plantations in Africa. They had enslaved Africans there as well. Many of the enslaved Africans that we say are from West Africa are really from Central Africa, and they were taken to West Africa. That's why the West Africans let them take those people. They didn't let them take their people, a lot of them. They let them take people from the Congo and other places like that, and Cameroon and different places. He said that was crazy. Yeah, it's crazy when you go back and do the research and see all this stuff and see what happened. And, they took people, we know they took people from Ireland and Scotland as well. They wiped up whole cities in Ireland. They kidnapped like whole cities of people in Ireland, mostly children. If you go back and see, a lot of the servants, they're starting at age 7, 8 years old, and they're slaves until they're in their 30s. And then even once they become 30, they come to court to try to petition for their freedom, and they still can't get their freedom. So that's what happened. When people want to use other people to prosper. So he said, rest the brain. Please choose the transatlantic trade as your next topic. And we can talk about Gorey Island. Oh, Gorey Island. What they call it, the beautiful fantasy of Gorey Island. Because a lot of that stuff that they say happened there did not happen there. So yeah, I'm going to do a little research and try to come up with that. I know a lot of people are not going to like it. They might unfriend or whatever. But they can do their own research and come to find the truth. And that's what it's all about, of educating yourself and knowing the truth. So, hey, Ty, you back? I'm about to sign up. Y'all see I look tired. I got to get up early tomorrow. It's past midnight here where I am. Anybody got any last questions before I sign off? I'll wait a minute. Okay, well, I'll just say peace to you all. Wangapo means greetings and peace and love. Po means peace. We have pow and powwows. It's peace. Yeah, so peace, you know.